Welcome to the macOS tutorial for beginners. If you're someone who is new to macOS, then this video will help you to get started with macOS. Now here, first we will begin with the Apple menu, which we can find in the top section. If you go to the top left, you can find the Apple icon. If you click on that, it will open up a small menu, and here we can find a lot of options. We can find the options to shut down, restart, sleep the computer. Also, at the same time, we can find the options to view the information about this Mac, and then we have the options to open up the system settings window and all. We will talk about these system settings and other things later, but right now I will click on this about this Mac. It will open up a small window where we can find the details about the computer that we have. For example, this is the MacBook Air M1, which I have here. You guys can see the chip, Apple M1, memory is 8 gigabytes, and then we can find the macOS Sequoia 15.3.1 is running here. So basically, we can find the details about our computer here. Now after that, we can find the menu next to the Apple logo, and this menu will depend on the application that we are using. For example, if I was using this Brave browser, if it was my current application that I was using, then this menu will be about this Brave browser. So here, by using this menu, I can access the functionality of this Brave browser. Now, if none of the programs are running, then by default, this menu is about Finder. The reason for that is Finder is one application which is always running. If you have used the Windows computer, then it is like the Windows Explorer. Because the Finder program is running, we have the access to this graphical environment. Now, we will talk about this Finder later. Now, if you go to the top right section, then we can find a lot of options in here. Mainly here we can find the date and time. If I click on that, it will open up the widgets window where we can customize the widgets that we have. We have the options to add or remove the widgets. For example, here we can find the temperature widget, which displays the temperature depending on the place that you have. And then I have some clocks in here, and then I have the market info widget, which displays the Dow Jones, S&P 500, and basic details about the market. And then I have the usage widget in here, which displays information about my usage of this particular computer. And then here we can find this control center. If I click on that, then I have the access to see the Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, AirDrop, and I have the options to increase the sound, decrease it. I have the options to change the brightness and all these things. And then we have this search icon. It is called as the spotlight. By using this, we can search the entire computer for programs and folders and files. If you have used Windows, then it is like clicking on the start menu and searching for some items. For example, here I can search for Safari. Safari is the browser that is available in macOS, and as you guys can see here, it displays the applications and some other files and folders which are related to the search term. So here, by clicking on this Safari, I can open up the program, and as you guys can see, Safari has been opened here. You can access the spotlight by pressing Command and space bar together. It will open up the spotlight. You can quickly search for the things and find the items. And after that, we have the Wi-Fi icon, which will display information about the Wi-Fi. Here, by clicking on this Wi-Fi settings, I can access the Wi-Fi settings options. I can add or remove the Wi-Fi connections. And then we have the battery icon, which displays the information about the battery. And by clicking on this battery settings, we can find more information about the battery settings, which will be available in the system settings. We will talk about this later. And after that, by default, when we open up the Mac, we are in the desktop. Here, if we right click, then we have the options to create a new folder, get some information about this desktop. We have the options to change the wallpaper, etc. Now in the bottom we can find the dock. Dock is the place where we have quick access to the programs that we want. For example, here in my dock I have the Finder, which is a program which allows us to view files and folders in the computer. And then we can find the Launchpad, which provides access to all the installed programs in this computer. If I click on this, I can see all the programs that are installed in here. By clicking on these programs, I can open up them and I can use them. And after that, I have the Safari here, Brave browser, and Reminder, Notes, etc. You guys can customize this depending on your liking, depending on the applications that you use. You can add those applications in here. If you want to remove some applications from this dock, then all you have to do is select that application and then drag it to the outside like this. It will be removed from the dock. Similarly, if you want to add any applications, what you can do is you can click on the Launchpad. It will display all the applications that are available. Whatever the program that you want to add to the dock, you can select that and then drag it to the dock. Wherever you want to add it, it will be added to the dock. And then after that, in this dock, we can find the currently used applications and files and folders. And then finally, we have the bin here. It is the recycle bin. All the files and folders that you delete, those items will appear here. If you right click on this, then you have the options to empty the recycle bin, or you have the option to open the recycle bin and view the files that are present in there. Now after that, here we will talk about the Finder. If I click on the Finder icon, it will open up this window, kind of like the Windows Explorer. Here by default it opens with the recent files folder, where we can find all the recent files that we have worked with. You can change this option also if you want to. And here in the top left section of this window, we have the options to maximize this window, and then we have the options to minimize, and then we have the option to close this application. And here what I will do is I will maximize this. And then here first we have the options of this airdrop folder. If you have airdropped any files from your iPhone or iPad or any other Mac device, then that will appear here. And then we have the applications. If I click on that, it will open up the applications folder, where we can find all the applications that we have installed. If you want to view them in different ways, you can do that by clicking on these options in here. For example, right now it is displaying them like this. If I click on this, individual icons will be displayed like this, and here it will display the items like this. All these different options are available to view the files. So depending on whatever you like, you can use that. Now after that, we have the desktop folder in here. This desktop folder is nothing but the folder that we have in our desktop. So here you guys can see I have a folder called as Mac Recordings. You can see that here in the desktop also. So after that, we have the documents, again a folder where we can keep our documents. And then we have the downloads folder, where generally the downloaded files are saved. And then we have the access to iCloud Drive, and then the shared folders. And then I have the Macintosh hard disk in here. If I click on that, it will open up the Macintosh hard disk, where I can find some folders. Here, if I open up the users folder, then here I can find my username. If I open up that, I can see the folders like desktop, documents, downloads, etc. Now here, if you want, you can associate the files and folders with some specific tags. If you do that, then by clicking on these tags in here, you can access them. If you take the cursor on the top, then you can find the menu that is about the Finder. Now, by clicking on this Finder menu here, you can change the settings for the Finder. For example, if I click on this settings here, it will open up the Finder settings. Now here we can find a lot of options. For example, I said before, when we open up the Finder, by default, it opens up with the recents folder. If you want to change that, then you can do here. That option is available. Along with that, many other options are available. For example, if you go to the sidebar, then you can customize the items that you want to see in the sidebar of the Finder. So you can do all those customizations in here. Now after that, we will talk about the system settings window. So I will click on the Apple icon, then I will click on system settings. It will open up the system settings where we can find all the settings related to the computer. If any highlights are available, then they are displayed here in the top. And then here we can find our user account. If I click on that, we can find the settings and options related to the user account. We have Wi-Fi where we can change the settings for Wi-Fi. Then Bluetooth. Here you can find the devices that you are connected using the Bluetooth. If you want to add them, remove them, you can do that here. And then we have network. Again, things related to network. Then we have battery, where we can find the information related to the battery. I can see that battery health is there. If I click on this eye icon, it opens up the battery details. Here we can find the maximum capacity of the battery that we have in our computer. And after that, you can see the way battery is used in this computer. And then we have general settings. If I click on that, again, it opens up the general settings window where we can find the information about, this particular MacBook, this particular Mac device that we have. And then we have the options about software update, where we can find whether any updates are available for the computer. If any updates are available, then we can install them. And then we have storage, where we can find details about the memory of this particular Mac device. How much is the space available, how much is used, all these informations are available in here. And then, you have the options to change the passwords, date and time, language and region, etc. Now, after that, we can find accessibility. If I click on that, you have the options related to the accessibility. For example, you can change the settings related to keyboard. If you want to use the audio descriptions, you can do that. All these options are available in here. And after that, we have appearance. If I click on that, we can change the theme that is used in the computer. I always prefer the dark theme, so I have selected dark in here. If you want to use a different theme, then you can select that here, select the color combination that you want. All those settings can be done here. And then we have the Apple Intelligence in here, where you can find the stuff related to Apple Intelligence. And then we have the control center, where we can control the icons which will appear in the control center. You can change them in here. And then we have desktop and dock. Here you can find the settings related to dock and desktop. For example, if you want to change the size of the dock, you can do that here by changing the size for the dock. All these settings are available in here. And then we have displays option, where you can control the displays connected to your device. For example, right now I'm connected to an external display in here. That information is available to me. Now again, depending on the devices that you have, you will find the options to select different displays if they are connected, and you can work with them. And then we have the options to change the screensaver. And then we have the settings that are related to Spotlight. So you can control the folders where the Spotlight program should search. All these things can be controlled here. And then we have the wallpaper option, where you can change the wallpaper of your computer. And then we have a lot of other settings, for example, like Touch ID and password, where you can add or remove the Touch ID or password of your computer. So a lot of other options are available. You can find them, you can use them if you need them. Now the next thing that we see here is how we can create a folder or a file in macOS. Now what you can do is you can go to the location where you want to create the folder or the file. For example, I will go to the documents here, and then here, in order to create a new folder, I can right click. I have the option new folder. If I choose that, I can give a name for the folder. For example, I can say test. If I hit the enter key, then a new folder is created with that particular name. Now I can open up that folder and I can work here. Now if you want to delete a folder, all you have to do is select that, right click, move to bin, and that folder will be deleted and it will be moved to the recycle bin. Now let us talk about how we can copy and paste. Now just like in a Windows computer, the shortcuts are pretty much the same. Instead of using Ctrl+C to copy, Ctrl+V to paste, we use Command+C and Command+V. Now here what I will do is I will select the file, and then I can use the shortcut key Ctrl+C, or I can right click here and then I can click on copy, and then I will go to my desktop here and then I will paste. This time I will use Command+V, and it will just paste the file. Now finally here we will see how we can install some applications. Now in order to install the applications, you can use the App Store. Now here in this App Store, you can look for the application that you want. If it is available, you can install it. For example, here I will search for WhatsApp. Then it will display the applications depending on the search term. I can choose the application. Then if I click on the get, and then if I authorize, the application will be installed. For some reason, if the application that you are looking for is not available, then you can download that and install it manually. For example, here what I will do is I will open up the browser and I will search for Google Chrome, and then I will open up the Google Chrome web browser page, and here I will download the Google Chrome for macOS. So I will click on allow and provide the permission to download the file. Now here the download is happening. We will wait for this download to finish. Okay, now the file has been downloaded in here. If I double click on this downloaded file, then it will open up this particular window. In order to install this particular application, all I have to do is select this application like this and then drag it to the applications folder. And once we do that, it will copy these applications to the application folder and the application will be installed. So here, once the application is installed, we can close this installation window, and then here in the desktop we can find this Google Chrome, which is the application that we have installed. Then we can right click on that and then we can click on eject Google Chrome. It will just remove the unnecessary files which are not needed anymore. And after that, if we click on the launch pad, if we search for Chrome, we can find the application that we have installed. In this particular case, it is Google Chrome. So this is how we can do some of the basic stuff in macOS. If you like it, hit the like button. If you don't like it, hit the dislike button. If you have anything to say, write that in the comment box. For more tutorials, subscribe to the channel.